Throughout this video series, I'm going to be giving you some tips on things that you can do to help build a healthy business and a healthy life. And if you're starting out in business, particularly if you're starting out with any sort of an online venture, in the early days you'll probably be working from home. And you need to ask yourself a few questions really as to whether it's going to be right for you or not. And of course there are lots of advantages, but there are also a number of disadvantages, and you really need to weigh those up before you make a decision as to whether or not you want to work from home. Let me go through some of the most common ones. Of course, one thing about working from home and working for yourself is there's no boss. There's no boss shouting at you like this guy here. You don't have to answer to any particular individual. You don't have to keep a boss happy. You don't have to conform to the things that they want you to do. On the downside, of course, when you don't have a boss, when you're your own boss, well, you have to make all the decisions. You can't say, well, that's a bit above my pay grade and simply kick it upstairs. You've got to make all the decisions yourself, and you have to stand by them, right or wrong. Another thing is, of course, you can set your own hours. You don't have to be like this guy here who's obviously at work, at his job, but he'd rather be out fishing. And lots of people think when they start their own business, well, I can start my own business, I can work whatever hours suits me, I can work, a couple of hours a week, and I can spend the rest of the time fishing or whatever it is that you enjoy doing. Sadly though, the reality often tends to be a lot like this, because particularly in the early days you're doing everything yourself. Quite often you find that you're working much longer hours than you were in your old job, and quite often you end up like this lady here, working on late into the night, doing things that you didn't do in your old job, because in addition to doing your job, you also have to run your business, and that can be very time consuming. And so sometimes you find that you have actually less leisure time when you're your own boss than you do when you work for somebody else. And of course, another big incentive is there's no commuting. You can spend more time with your family because you're working from home. Although the reality often turns out to be a lot more like this lady here. You can see she's trying to work away, but you've got the kids fighting in the foreground there. You've got another child that wants attention. You've got the dog barking, and the next door neighbors are having some work done on their roof, so there's lots of hammering and banging going on. And particularly if you live in a suburb, you'll find that lots of things go on, lots of noisy things go on that you didn't know about because you were away at work. So this is perhaps more typical of something that happens when you're working from home. So before you decide to work from home, you need to ask yourself these questions. First and foremost, are you comfortable making decisions? Because you're the person who's going to have to make all the decisions about the business, about what clients you take on, about what you do, about where you work from, all sorts of things. It all comes down to you. You are the sole decision maker if you run your own business and work from home. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, will your family be supportive? Because if your family is not supportive, you're going to find it very, very difficult to run your own business from home. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if your family isn't supportive, you simply shouldn't do it. You should either stick with your job, or you should find some other workspace that you can work from if your family is not going to be supportive about you working out of the family home. Very importantly, is there somewhere that you can work undisturbed? And just like the lady in that last slide who's got a family around her and it's all very noisy, you need to find somewhere that you can work that is undisturbed, where you're not going to be constantly interrupted by other people, where your train of thought isn't going to be interrupted by noises and other things and people coming and going and that sort of thing. So you need to take that into consideration. And are you self-reliant? Are you able Like we were saying earlier on, are you able to make all the decisions? Are you someone who needs support from other people? Are you someone who is happy with their own company? Are you someone who is a leader, or someone who is self-reliant, someone who is able to get on and do things by themselves? They don't need someone telling them what to do. And finally, in a similar thing, do you enjoy your own company, or do you prefer to be with other people all the time? And this can be a big thing when you first start becoming self-employed, when you first start working from home, especially if you're used to being with lots of other people. Because, well, you're not with a lot of other people, you're by yourself working at your computer. And if you enjoy your own company, if you're self-reliant, if you're self-motivated, then that's not a problem. But if you're used to working in a big open plan office with people around you all the time, and that's what you enjoy, you're going to find working from home on your own very difficult. In fact, you could be a bit like this guy here. Here we can see him working away at home at his drawing board, but he's reminiscing about times when he had his job and he was surrounded by his colleagues and co-workers, and he generally misses the atmosphere and the buzz of being around other people. Now, I'll cover this in a bit more detail in a later video, but this is something that you really do need to take into consideration. So you need to weigh up the options carefully before you decide whether or not working from home is right for you.